Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Got a little project going to work on today. I asked Jodee this year, what do you want for Christmas? She said, I want to get this window trimmed. So this window's looked like this for a few years now. We put in this brand new window, when we were doing the siding outside. It's all insulated around the edges, but it hasn't had any trim. It's just, you're looking at the edge of drywall and Tyvek tape and house wrap. And so, that's going to be nice to get this done and nice for her. And so we're going to get this trim done. And we've got quite a few of the windows in this house trimmed, but not this one, and we still have several to go. So yeah, we're going to get that done. And not only is it going to be a window done for her, but we also have this beautiful Tiffany reproduction stained glass piece that we'll be showing you. Once we get this painted, it'll be hung here. And it's pretty good size, and that's a present I got for her years ago, probably 20 plus years ago I got it, and it's been wrapped up in blankets and stored safely away. And she's known for years, since we've had this house now, that she wants it here. So not only is she getting a window trimmed out that's going to look really nice in here, but she's going to be able to put up her stained glass piece. So it's kind of a double whammy. Let's get going on it. If you got a lot of windows to do, you might want to make a little jig like this. This represents the jamb. This piece represents the casing. You probably can't see it, but I make little pencil marks 3/4 of an inch away from this edge, because that's the reveal. Our trim is going to come to here, our jambs and everything, and our window stool. This represents the jamb, and I can put that on my mark like so. And then I can just come out here and scribe a line, which represents where my casing's going to end up in the finished trim. And so I'll have a pencil line on both sides like that. Now it gives me something to measure off of, so that I can cut my window stool piece to the right length. Here's a window that's already cased out. It just needs a little primer, a little sand and a little primer, and some caulk, and it's ready for painting. But this gives you an idea what I'm talking about. This piece represented this, and this casing piece represents that. And so that I was able to mark the wall, measure the piece for this window stool, and then add the extra 1 inch for the part of the window stool, this part here that extends past the casing. So my marks from my casing outside there and my casing outside on this side, that measurement is 41 3/4, and then I add an extra inch on for the window stool to go past the casing, so that's an inch here and an inch there. So my actual window stool piece, which is a 5/4, so 1 inch thick, needs to be cut at 43 3/4 length. I also have to rip it because I need to kind of custom make it for the depth I want here. Window stool needs to be 4 inches wide, because it's a 2x4 wall, not a 2x6, because it's an old house. And I just want the front edge of the window stool to stick out past the drywall about an inch. So 1.5 inches. So I want to rip this down to 4 inches. I'm just going to do it here in the shed because it's kind of rainy out. I'm just going to let my garbage can here catch the piece as it comes off. I got my little vacuum tube here pointed into the bucket to catch most of the sawdust. So I got this piece cut to length, so it's an inch past each of my marks. I've got it ripped to width so that it sticks out 1 inch past the drywall. Now I need to mark out where I need to notch it, because I need to cut a L notch to fit around the wall here. So it'll come back to that, and then it'll extend out past the casing. And a really good way to do that, to make sure you're getting it nice and tight to the drywall, yeah, you could measure off of this back, and that's not a bad way to do it. I like to take a straight edge and kind of set it up against where my casing is going to be, and then come up here scribe that line there. And I flip this over, and I do the same thing over here on this side. Now I need to determine how long to make those cuts. These don't have to be perfect exact because I'm going to have a jam leg on the side coming down and covering that cut. But you do want to get it kind of close, so if you just put your board out so that it's going an inch past the line here and an inch past the line on this side, then you can kind of just come in and make a little mark. Give yourself enough room where you're not pinching. So this part gets cut out so that it can slide into the sill. Might use the jigsaw on that. Here's a close-up of that. I've got a bigger gap here than I want to try to caulk. So I'm going to take a little fuzz cut off of that, about a blade, maybe 1/8 of an inch, so that we can stick this in a little tighter. Okay, I got done finessing this. And you can see now I've got a pretty nice tight gap here. I've got a pretty nice tight gap here. And so that should end up looking pretty nice when I get it all cased out and everything. So this window stool piece is by far the most complicated piece to cut the way I'm trimming out these windows. Every other piece is just a square cut, and it's all dimensional trim board. It's just finger jointed whitewood or fir, pre-primed. This is the 5/4 thick, so it's 1 inch thick by 6 that I ripped down to 4 inches. But all the other stuff is either 1x4, 1x2, 1x3, or 1x5. And so you can just buy that stuff ready to go. I didn't come up with this method. This is something, Jodee wanted a fancier trim in the house as opposed to just, mitered corner 4-piece trim. So the next step in the window trim process is to fasten down this window stool, making sure that it's perfectly left to right and where you want it, so that the casings and the reveals all match up properly. I need to shim. If you can see this, you can't see it, but there's a little pencil mark. That's where I really want my window stool to be. So I need to shim up this sill here. So I got the window stool all cut, ready to install. I need to shim it up a little bit, and then I gotta start building the jambs around the top and the sides. And to do that, you gotta shim things out, usually. What I like to do, I kind of pre-make a bunch of shims, like little shim blocks. What I've got here is a bunch of pieces of 1/2 inch plywood, and I've got a bunch of this, not really a 1/4 inch, it's more like 3/16, like plywood underlayment. I think they call it 5 mil, but it's kind of like 3/16. And then I cut up a bunch of pieces of 30-pound felt in the same size. I don't know, they're about 3 inches by 2 inches. And I make a box of them. When you're doing jams and stuff, you don't really want your typical tapered shims like you use, when you're putting a new door in, or a pre-hung door, or door jams in a door where you're sliding the shims in from both sides to shim your jam out. You don't really have access to the other side of a window because it's in a window frame. And so I find something like this works really, really well. It goes really fast. I might not do this if I only had one window to do, but I got a lot of windows to do. So, having something like this ready to go, I can build up to any thickness I need, anywhere from a 1/16 of an inch to an inch or whatever, with something like this. So, it took maybe 5 or 10 minutes to rip this and cut them up on my chop box, but it's going to save me a ton of time actually getting these windows installed. So I needed to elevate the window stool just a little bit to get it up to my pencil marks on the window frame. And so what I used is some of the little 5 mil or the 3/16 inch shims, which brings it up exactly where I want it. I've measured and put a mark at 1 inch on each side of this window stool, so that it corresponds to the marks I put over here when I did my window casing jam mock-up, so I can scribe that line. So now all I got to do to make sure my window stool is perfect left to right is to line up this mark at 1 inch to that mark and make sure it's the same on this side, which it is. Then I know that when I go to put my casings and get my reveal, everything will be even and spaced properly and looking just right. These trim head screws are nice because it's a small head to fill with your filler before you do your final sand and paint. This brand is the GRK. If you put the screw close enough to the edge here, it'll be hidden by this jamb. That just gives you one less screw hole or nail hole that you have to fill. Now that we got the window stool screwed down, now we got to build the jamb. It'll go here, here, and the top. I like to do the top first. Again, I'll need to shim down here to get down to these pencil marks. There's two schools of thought on jambs. A lot of guys will build the jamb. They'll take the top piece of the jamb and the two side legs and they'll build it, screw it together, nail it together, and make a 3-part piece and then install that all at one time. But what that does is it leaves big gaps here that you have to come in after the fact and fill with some kind of shim so that when you nail it, it doesn't suck it in too far. I like to build my jamb in place. It's just easier for me. I've done both and they both work fine. I just find that it's easier to shim block this up first. To me, it's faster and easier. So an easy way to see how many shims you need to pack this out behind your jamb. So if you have something that represents the thickness of your jamb, then you can just quickly grab some of your shim material to see what you need. And what I found here is I need 2 of these little 5 mils and 2 pieces of tar paper, the 30-pound felt, on this corner. And then I can put my little temporary, my little mock-up piece that represents my jamb, and I can see I'm coming right down to my pencil mark. And I'm able to use the standard dimensional 1x3s because from my window framing to the edge of the drywall is exactly 2.5 inches. So I didn't even need to rip these down. I can just slap them right in for my jambs and have them come out just where I need them. And again, if you nail it close enough to the edge here and here, then your side jambs will cover that hole, and the only filling you're going to need to do is in the center. But you can see now I've got a nice even reveal across this whole span. Now that we got this top jamb piece in, we're ready to cut the jamb legs that come from underneath this top piece and land down here on the window stool. So we'll make a measurement on those, we'll cut those. Same drill. We'll take our little shimming kit and we'll pack it out to my pencil mark here, here, and here. This side needs to be 58 and a 16th. A little trick my brother taught me is when you're doing kind of precise cuts, instead of a pencil, use your razor knife. Because then I can come right down on that 58 and a 16th mark and just make a little impression. Pencil lines are a lot thicker than that. Okay, well, we're done with the shim box until the next window, because this is the only thing we needed to shim up was these jambs. So you can see now how my little shim blocks there bring this out. And now if you look around the whole window, you'll see that my vinyl window reveal to the jamb and the window stool are all a nice even 3/4 of an inch. And that's what's going to give you a nice pro job look. Now the fun part is installing the casing legs, the apron on the bottom, and building up that header piece up there that kind of gives it that elegant trim touch. So just like my reveal is 3/4 of an inch around the jamb and the window, all the exterior pieces of trim around the jamb is going to have a 1/4 inch reveal. So a gap about like that. If you remember when we first talked about this template that we made up to mark the walls, I have this this 1/4 inch reveal there, representing the jamb and the casing. So the first thing I need to do is come in and mark a 1/4 inch mark with a pencil line to show where that reveal line is. So when I go to put my casings on, that I know I've got the right reveal. So now I've got marks where my reveals are. I like to put one in the middle here as a reference. And that's because if the piece you're putting up has any bow to it at all, you're going to want to kind of tweak it into the right position before you fasten. And so by having a spot in the middle marked out too, you might need to fasten the top and the bottom and then push this in or pull it in order to get it on your pencil mark so that your reveal looks equal around the whole window. So the next step is to put these jamb legs on, this one, and get it nice and perfect on that pencil line. So we'll need to measure that. But this mark that we made up here, that's going to tell us how tall that our casing leg needs to be, because we want our parting bead that we'll be doing next to sit on top of that and come up right to that line, so that the reveal line here under the parting bead is also correct. So what we want to do is we just want to come straight down and come up and measure to our pencil line. I'm at 58 5/16. Will get me right to that line. I actually cut this one about a 30 seconds short, but that's okay because this side is just a little bit shorter than this side. So I'll use it on this side and it'll be the perfect length for that side. And so when I go to fasten this casing leg on right here, I just want to make sure that I'm on my pencil marks on the inside there. And if I got to tweak this a little bit in the middle to get it there, that's what I'll do. You're looking to put a fastener into the stud, which is going to be, there's the edge of the drywall, so the stud's going to be right about here. If you want to hit one in the middle of the stud, and then you want to come out and get a nail also through this edge into the jamb. And make sure you have your gun at the right angle so it doesn't want to blow out on you. I'm using 2.5 inch 16 gauge nails for everything today. And so again, what I'll do is fasten the bottom and the top, and that way if I need to, if this board's got a little bend in it, I can get that sorted out when I go to put this fastener in the middle. I can push it or pull it to that pencil line and then nail it into the stud, and that way I can make sure that that reveal is going to be 1/4 inch all the way down. So here's a good example of what I'm talking about. I've got the top and bottom nailed, but the center's not nailed yet. And as you can see right here, I'm just shy of that pencil line, which means I've got a fatter reveal here than the top and bottom. So this is what I was saying. You can push over to that line right there to get my reveal line just right. Now I can come in and nail that. And now I've got a nice even reveal line from the bottom all the way up to the top. Okay, now we'll do the exact same thing on the right-hand side casing. Once I got the second casing leg cut, I like to just kind of put it in place. And then I like to take a straight edge like a level and put it on top. That gives me an ability to see this reveal line as it's going to be in reality, not just looking at this next to the pencil line on both sides. And I'm happy with it. I've got about a perfect 1/4 inch here. Now I can fasten this casing leg in place. Okay, we got these two casing sides done. The next piece we can put in is the window apron, or the apron trim that goes underneath here. And we'll want that to come to the same edge as the casings. So we can just measure the casing here. 41 9/16. We'll just want to make sure and center it up. But what I want to do is I want to just take maybe some like 220 grit or something. Just radius that edge slightly, just to ease it. And then I want to take some caulk and smear some caulk on this end grain. And so that when that'll dry, and that way when we paint that and prime that, we don't have to worry about it soaking in, the paint soaking in and showing this end grain. That'll be kind of, that caulk will be kind of a sealer. I'll just use DAP 40 year interior like I'm going to use around the window, but we'll just kind of do a thin finger coat on that. Now we'll just take a little bit of caulk. Just to seal up that end grain. I measured over from the casing to the end of the stool, 1 inch, and then made a mark so that when I go to put this up here, I've got something to line it up to. Okay, getting pretty close to finishing this up with some filler on the nail holes and caulking the window out, getting it ready for paint. But first we've got to come up and put up our crown piece up here. Again, the whole basis of this window project, the way we're doing the trim on the windows and doors, is keep it simple, keep it cheap, but get a more refined look. And all this is a piece of 1x2 standard dimensional trim board, a 1x5, a 1x2 again, and a 1x3. And this is all stuff I can buy at Home Depot in this size. This will just go up like this and hang out over a 1/2 inch, and that'll make up your trim for your crown piece. And then I like to make it all on a flat table. You know, you can't really get a nailer up here to nail these final pieces into this piece because your nail gun's going to hit the wall there. So what I like to do is just build this thing out at the length I need, and then screw it and nail it all together on the table, and then come up here, slap it up, make sure it's centered, and then go ahead and nail it up to the header. I give myself a 1/2 inch overhang, a 1/2 inch overhang, and a 1/2 inch overhang. So everything's really simple to figure out. You just measure the distance between your casings and add 1 inch, and that gives you a 1/2 inch over on your parting bead. So it's very simple to cut, very simple. And then we'll do the same thing on these where we have this end grain. We'll do a light sand with 220 real quick on all this end grain, and we'll just come in and give it a little finger smear with caulk. Most important measurement's going to be from here to here. Everything else we can figure out at the table with the tape measure. That's the only measurement we really need to build this little crown piece. And we're at 41 9/16. Same as the apron piece down here, which it should be, but sometimes to get your reveal perfect on both sides, you might have one casing, you know, a little bit out of plumb, because really you're trying to focus on making this reveal look perfect more so than perfect plumb on things when you're getting into your finished trim. So all we got to do is add 1 inch to the 41 9/16. So we'll just do 42 9/16 for that first 1x2 that gives us that parting bead across the top of the casing legs. Again, we just overlap a 1/2 inch here, a 1/2 inch there, and a 1/2 inch here. So we'll just want to make sure those measurements are the same on both sides before we nail it all together. Okay, so we've got this crown piece here built, and now it's time to install that. We just need to make sure that we get it centered left to right. Okay, that's a trimmed out window. I got everything put together. Now I need to fill all the nail holes with some filler, let that kick real quick, light sand on that, then I can go around and caulk everything and be ready for paint. so that I can caulk that. As small as that gap is, I like to put a little caulk in that gap and make sure that that looks real nice. And then that way I can caulk it, peel the tape off, and I don't get any overlap of caulk on the vinyl. There you have it, all ready for paint. Got that trim all done. And a couple final thoughts. You know, this is just a really good way to kind of elevate the look of inexpensive windows. These are just, you know, inexpensive vinyl windows. And if we would have just put a simple, you know, 4-piece trim with miter corners, yeah, we could have saved a few bucks, but it would just look like a cheap vinyl window. And it's really not that much money. Like I said, everything was bought from Home Depot for the most part. It's all just standard trim size boards, and it's finger jointed white wood, so it's all real wood. It's not MDF. It's not going to swell up and, you know, get all, you know, bumpy and what have you if it ever gets wet.
My hair falling out. Just like it.
Christmas, Jodee. As an added Christmas bonus for Jodee, we also hung up our art silk rug on this wall. It's so nice to see this living room start to come together. Can't wait to get these hardwood floors down.